it's me, Miss Brown, and in today's lesson, we are learning about the French Revolution. So, you should have your French Revolution notes. Make sure your first and last name and your period is on your paper. And let's get started. All right, today's learning target, the student will be able to explain what caused the French Revolution, which you can see is very similar to your exit ticket, what caused the French Revolution. So, if you cannot answer that question at the end of the lesson, you are not ready for the activity or the exit ticket. The guillotine has become a symbol of the French Revolution. It's estimated that during the Revolution, over 40,000 people died by guillotine, including the King of France, King Louis XIV. The guillotine was first created by Dr. Joseph Ignacio Guillotine, hence the name, who was disturbed by the barbarity of public executions, which were attended back then by huge crowds. So he built this thing to be a more humane way of punishing people. To him, it was a better execution than a hooded person with an axe who had to chop at your neck, sometimes several times. He described this as a cool breath of air on the neck. And he also lobbied that there be no more public executions, which does not happen. During the peak of the French Revolution, known as the Terror, over 40,000 people are going to be killed by the guillotine. In the 1770s, the social and political system of France, the old regime, remained in place. Under this system, people of France were divided into three social classes or estates. So, in the first estate is the clergy or church leaders. These people got money from land, but they also got a tithe from everybody. If you don't know what tithe is, that's 10% of every church member's income. This money was used for schools and, well, it was supposed to be used for schools and to aid the poor people, but really it just made the clergy rich. The second estate, which made up 2% of the population, was made up of those in government. These people usually lived in rich houses. Both estates paid no taxes. However, how did we get taxes? From the third estate, which we'll talk about in a second. Next, we have the third estate, which represents 97% of the population. The three groups that made up this estate differ greatly. So first you had the first group, which was the bourgeoisie. These are middle-class people like bankers, teachers, factory owners, merchants, professionals. Often they were educated and believed strongly in the Enlightenment. Remember the Enlightenment? Things like liberty and equality. Many were inspired by the American Revolution. Although some of the bourgeoisie were rich as nobles, they paid high taxes, and like the rest of the third estate, they lacked privileges. Many felt that their wealth entitled them to a greater degree of social status and political power. The workers of France's cities formed the second. This formed the second and poorest group within the third estate. These urban workers included tradespeople, apprentices, laborers, domestic servants. They're paid very low wages, and they're frequently out of work, and they go hungry. If the cost of bread goes up, many of these people mob and attack grain carts to get food for them and their children. Peasants form the largest group within the third estate, more than 80% of France's 26 million people. Peasants paid about half of their income in dues to nobles, then tithes to the church, and taxes to the king's agents. Peasants and the urban poor resented the clergy and the nobles for their privileges and special treatment and were eager for change. And the third estate is going to be one of the groups that lead to the French Revolution. All right, so getting to those causes of the French Revolution, which take us back to our learning target, we have three major economic problems that are going to breed unrest and lead to this revolution. First and foremost, France was involved in several wars, so the French and Indian War. Then remember, France comes in and helps the Americans in the American Revolution. Well, to do that, they had to borrow money. They were already in debt due to former kings, and then to fund these wars, Louis XIV had to borrow and borrow and borrow, which led them to be in what we call a deficit. Deficit means I got $100 and I borrow another 100. Now I'm in a deficit of $100. Meaning I had 100, I borrowed 100. So now I owe $100. In their case, they had no money left and now they're borrowing. So they're in the negative XYZ dollars. Last but not least, we have bad food harvest, meaning when farmers went out to farm, there was not enough food to feed the nation. As a result, prices went up. Prices for bread, prices for other foods doubled. And if you were in the third estate, you didn't have the money to pay it, so you and your family starved. Louis XIV was not a very good king. He was very indecisive, prone to fits of depression. He paid very little attention to the advisors that he inherited. And while this is happening, his queen Marie Antoinette adds to the problems. She frequently interfered with government, and she offered Louis very poor advice. Since she was a member of the family of Austria, so she came from Austria and married him, and Austria was a long-term enemy of France. Nobody trusted her, and so many times her unpopular behavior made the situation a lot worse. In addition to the fact that she spent money on gowns, jewels, gambling, and many called her Madame Deficit, meaning she's aiding in the fact that we don't have enough money. So by 1788, France is on the verge of bankruptcy. There are bread riots, nobles are fearful of taxes, and everybody's criticizing the king. And so Louis XIV, again, this guy here, is at a loss and doesn't know what to do, so he summons the Estate General. This is a version of Congress. But the Estates General does not include the third estate. This is literally just first and second estate. So third estate delegates, who are mostly bourgeoisie, wanted to make changes in government, and they insisted that all three estates meet. After weeks of a stalemate, the delegates of the third estate took a daring step. They declared themselves the National Assembly, meaning we represent what our country wants, and they wrote their own constitution. A few days later, the National Assembly found its meeting hall locked and guarded. So after they had this meeting and developed this constitution, their hallway was locked. So what did they do? They met at a tennis court, which is what they will eventually call the tennis court oath, where they swear that we will never to separate and meet wherever the circumstances might require until we have established a sound and just constitution. I.e., we'll meet wherever we need to meet and get us a constitution that works for our entire country. Rumors began to fly that King Louis was trying to stop the National Assembly and its reforms, or, and this may be worse, attack French citizens. So people began to get weapons to hopefully offset any kind of an attack. So on July 14th, people began marching to the Bastille, which was a Paris prison. They overwhelmed the guards. They attacked the prison commander and several guards. They cut them into shreds and basically killed them and hung their heads on pikes. The fall of the Bastille became a great symbolic act, basically symbolic of we are taking back our rights. And it is now still a day that they celebrate. July 14th, the Bastille Day, very similar to our day, July 4th, which is the day we signed the Declaration of Independence. So while all of this is going on, the rebellion in Paris is spreading all around the country. From one village to the next, people are spreading wild rumors. They're terrorized that the peasants will be terrorized by these nobles, the men that own the land. Peasants began to arm themselves with pitchforks and tools or whatever they could find. They destroyed papers that bonded them to these lords and ladies. And sometimes they just destroyed their houses. This here is a picture of them storming the Bastille. Alrighty, on page 6, it says, give me 3 causes of the French Revolution. Doesn't have to be in a complete sentence, but I want to see 3 things that are leading or have led to the French Revolution.